My brothers celebrated Mom's death with champagne, unaware the new nurse pouring it was actually their estranged scientist sister. They killed her for an inheritance that I made worthless with a single piece of paper. You might think that's a dramatic way to start a story, but honestly, drama is the only currency my family has ever dealt in. Well, drama and greed. My name is Dr. Beatrix Vance. If you run in certain circles within the biochemical engineering world, you might know my name attached to papers on enzymatic breakdown or polymer synthesis. If you run in the social circles of high society New York, you probably know the Vance name for entirely different reasons: bankruptcy, scandals, and desperate attempts to cling to fading relevance. I haven't spoken to my siblings, Julian, Chloe, and Marcus, in 5 years. I cut them off when they tried to leverage my PhD grant money to pay off Julian's gambling debts. I retreated into my laboratory, finding comfort in the predictable, honest reactions of molecules. People lie, chemistry doesn't. But then I got the call. It was a Tuesday. I was monitoring a titration process when my phone buzzed. It was Julian. I almost didn't answer, but a cold pit formed in my stomach. Julian never called unless he needed bail money or unless someone was dead. "She's gone, B," he said. No tears, no crack in his voice, just a flat, almost relieved delivery. "Mom, she passed at Silver Oaks this morning. Heart failure." Mom was 65. She had a heart condition, yes, but it was managed. We had spoken 2 days prior. She was lucid, sharp, and excited about the daffodils blooming in the manor's garden. She wasn't at death's door. "When is the funeral?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Friday. Fast turnaround. You know how she hated a fuss. Also, we're reading the will immediately after. You should come. Or not. Whatever." He hung up. Something was wrong. The scientist in me, the part of my brain trained to look for anomalies in data, started screaming. Fast turnaround meant no autopsy. Silver Oaks was a facility that cost $20,000 a month, a place my mother had checked herself into to recover from a minor stroke, claiming she wanted the best care. But my siblings had power of attorney over her medical decisions, a concession she made years ago when she felt her physical health declining. I didn't just go to the funeral. I went to war. But first, I had to gather intelligence. I arrived in town a day early, but I didn't check into a hotel. I went to a costume shop and a pharmacy. I bought cheap, thick-grimmed glasses, a mousy brown wig that covered my distinctive platinum blonde bob, and scrubs. I scrubbed off my makeup, utilized a little contouring to make my face look gaunt and tired, and adopted a slouch. Dr. Beatrix Vance, lead researcher at Helix Dynamics, ceased to exist. In her place stood Betty, a weary agency nurse looking for per diem work. Silver Oaks Manor was less of a nursing home and more of a 5-star hotel where people went to die quietly. Marble floors, chandeliers, and the cloying scent of fresh lilies meant to mask the smell of incontinence and antiseptic. I walked in through the service entrance. My credentials as a registered nurse, a certification I kept active from my undergrad days before I pursued my doctorate, were legitimate, even if my appearance was altered. Labor shortages are everywhere. I counted on their desperation. I walked into the HR office, presented a resume that omitted my PhD and highlighted my experience in geriatric care, and was hired on the spot for a probationary shift. They needed bodies. "Can you start tonight?" the administrator asked. "We have a VIP wake happening in the East Wing, and the regular staff is stretched thin." "I'd love to," I said, my voice pitched an octave higher than usual. That night, I walked the halls where my mother had died only 48 hours prior. I made myself invisible. I changed bedpans, I checked vitals, and I listened. The staff at Silver Oaks were loose-lipped, especially around a temporary agency nurse they thought was a nobody. I was in the break room nursing a stale coffee when I heard 2 senior nurses, heavy-set women named Carla and Janine, whispering in the corner. "The Vance family is throwing a rager in the reception hall tomorrow," Carla said, rolling her eyes. "Barely cold and they're popping bottles." "Well, they got what they paid for," Janine muttered, checking the hallway before lowering her voice. "Sterling pushed the schedule up. I told him the dosage on the beta blockers was too low to be effective if we upped the morphine, but he said doctor's orders." "Which doctor? The one lining his pockets?"
My blood ran cold. Sterling, Director Sterling, and dosage. I needed the charts. Getting into the records room was terrifyingly easy. The security at Silver Oaks was designed to keep confused patients in, not to keep determined scientists out. I waited until the shift change at 3 a.m. I slipped into the nursing station, logged onto a terminal using the password I'd seen Janine type in earlier, password 123, naturally, and pulled up Eleanor Vance's file. My eyes scanned the data, translating the medical shorthand instantly. Admitted, stable. Week 1, hypertension managed. Week 2, sudden change in medication protocol authorized by power of attorney, Julian Vance. Switch from diltiazem to a generic diuretic. Week 3, dosage of digoxin withheld. Final 24 hours, massive administration of morphine for palliative care despite no record of pain crisis. They didn't just let her die. They chemically steered her into heart failure and then suppressed her respiratory system until she stopped breathing. It was a chemical assassination, clumsy but effective enough to pass as natural causes if no one looked too closely. I printed everything, every log, every authorization signature which belonged to my brother Julian, every timestamp. Then I went to my mother's room.
It had already been scrubbed clean for the next high-paying victim, but her personal effects were still in a box at the nurse's station, waiting to be collected. "I've been asked to inventory the Vance box," I told the night clerk, feigning boredom. "Go ahead, rich people junk," he grunted. I dug through the box. Her silk scarf, her reading glasses, and there, at the bottom, her leather-bound journal. My mother was a brilliant woman, a former patent lawyer who had stepped back to raise us, a sacrifice I only recently understood. I opened the journal. The last entry was dated 3 days ago. Julian was here. He smells of desperation and cheap cologne. He asked about the patent again. He thinks I'm senile. He thinks I don't know he's been talking to Sterling. They think I'm just a sick old woman. They've forgotten that I wrote the ironclad contracts that built this family's original fortune. I've made the call to the patent office. It's done. Let them have the house. It's a shell. The legacy is safe with Bea. Tears stung my eyes behind the fake glasses. She knew. She knew they were killing her, and she had played her own hand. The next day was the funeral. I didn't attend the service at the grave. I couldn't bear to watch them fake cry over the coffin they helped nail shut. Instead, I reported for my shift at Silver Oaks, where the reception was being held in the private event parlor. It was grotesque. Catered food, expensive wine, and my siblings holding court like royalty. Julian, wearing a suit that cost more than my car, was laughing loudly with Director Sterling in the corner. Chloe was showing off a diamond ring to a cousin, complaining about how long probate would take. Marcus, the youngest and usually the most guilt-ridden, was funneling scotch like it was water. I adjusted my wig, grabbed a bottle of Dom Perignon, and walked into the lion's den. "Champagne?" I offered, keeping my head down. "Finally," Julian snapped, snatching a glass. "Service here is abysmal. Sterling, you need to whip your staff into shape." "My apologies, Mr. Vance," Sterling simpered. "We're just so overwhelmed with the transition." "To Mom," Chloe toasted, raising her glass with a smirk. "And to the end of suffering." "To the end of debt," Julian muttered under his breath, clinking his glass against hers. "To the inheritance," Marcus slurred. I poured glass after glass, invisible to them. I was just the help. I circulated the room, listening to them dissect the estate. "The manor house in the Hamptons is worth $10 million easily," Julian bragged to an associate. "I've already got a buyer lined up. Cash offer." "And the stocks," Chloe added. "Mom was sitting on a portfolio from the 90s. We're going to liquidate it all. I'm thinking Paris for the winter." They were vultures picking at a carcass they had hunted down. "Excuse me," I said, my voice returning to its normal, commanding alto. I stood at the head of the room, near the small podium intended for eulogies. The room didn't quiet down immediately. "Excuse me," I shouted.
Julian turned, annoyed. The hell? Nurse, get back to... I reached up and pulled the wig off. My platinum blonde hair tumbled down. I removed the thick glasses and wiped the smudge of contour off my cheek. I stood up straight, shedding the slouch of Nurse Betty and inhabiting the posture of Dr. Beatrix Vance. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. It was heavy, suffocating, and delicious. "Bee?" Marcus whispered, the glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. "Beatrix?" Julian's face went from annoyance to confusion to a pale, sickly dread. What are you doing in that uniform?" "Serving you," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a scalpel. "Just like you paid the staff here to serve Mom her death sentence." Gasps rippled through the room. Director Sterling dropped his canapé. He looked like he wanted to run, but he was cornered by the buffet table. "You're crazy," Julian stammered, trying to regain control. "She's grieving, everyone. She's hysterical, estranged for years, and now she shows up making accusations." "I'm not grieving, Julian. I'm working," I said. I pulled the folded stack of medical records from my scrub pocket. "I have the logs. I have the IP addresses. I have the timestamps of when you authorized the withdrawal of her heart medication. I have the records of the morphine overdose administered by a nurse who, coincidentally, just bought a brand new Audi yesterday. Cash." Director Sterling started to sweat profusely. "Now, see here, Dr. Vance, these are privacy violations. I'm the next of kin," I snapped, "and I'm also a medical professional who knows that you don't treat stable hypertension with palliative morphine drips unless you're trying to stop a heart." Chloe looked like she was going to be sick. "You can't prove anything." "I've already sent copies to the state medical board, the district attorney, and the insurance fraud division." I lied. Well, it was a half lie. I had hit send on the email to the authorities 5 minutes ago from my phone in the kitchen. The police are actually en route, but that's not the best part. I walked toward them. My brothers, who used to torment me when we were kids, shrank back. "You killed her for the money," I said, looking Julian dead in the eye. "For the Hamptons house, the stocks, the liquid assets." "It's our right," Julian yelled, his facade cracking. "She was sitting on millions while I was drowning. She owed us." "She owed you nothing," I screamed back. "But here is the irony, Julian. You're not just a murderer, you're a bad businessman." I pulled the second piece of paper from my pocket. It was a photocopy of the patent confirmation my mother had referenced in her journal. "Mom wasn't just sitting around the last few years," I told them, addressing the whole room. "She was financing my research. The grant money you tried to steal, that was peanuts. Mom liquefied her personal savings. She mortgaged the Hamptons house to the hilt, and she sold the stocks 3 months ago." "What?" Chloe shrieked. "No, the house is free and clear." "The house is owned by the bank," I corrected her with a savage smile. "And the stocks? Sold. The money is gone. All of it." "Where did it go?" Marcus whimpered. "She invested it," I said, "in me, specifically in the filing and finalization of patent US 98442, a synthetic enzymatic process for breaking down polyethylene terephthalate in ocean water. It's a solution to the global plastic crisis." I held up the paper. "It's worth billions," I said softly, "not millions. Billions. Licensing deals are already on the table from 3 major governments." Julian's eyes went wide. The greed momentarily overpowered his fear of prison. "We're rich," he breathed. We're billionaires." "No," I said. "I am rich." I flipped the page to the beneficiary section. "Mom knew you were vultures. She knew you were waiting for her to die. So she put the patent, the intellectual property, and all future royalties solely in the name of Dr. Beatrix Vance. It is not part of the estate. It is not subject to probate. It is mine." The color drained from Julian's face so completely he looked like the corpse he had created.
The estate you killed for, I continued, it consists of a heavily mortgaged house, a bank account with maybe $2,000 in it, and a massive bill from Silver Oaks Manor that you are legally responsible for authorizing. You can't, Julian choked out. We're family. Family doesn't kill family for a payout, I said. At that moment, the double doors of the reception hall burst open, but it wasn't more guests. It was two uniformed officers and a detective in a cheap suit. Julian Vance, Director Sterling, the detective called out. I stepped back, pouring myself a glass of the champagne I had brought for them. I believe these are the gentlemen you're looking for, I said to the detective. The scene that followed was a chaotic blur of shouting, Miranda rights, and Chloe's sobbing on the floor about how she couldn't go to jail because she had a gala next week.